kale, if no one is, I mean, no one should be surprised. I'm a lover of kale. I don't love kale as much as I love collards. But to be fair and transparent, I think kale actually is more multi-use than collards. So spoiler, collards are not on my list. We'll see if it's on Ben's. So anyway, so kale is a great one for eating fresh, right? It is a spring crop in my garden. It's also a fall going into kind of almost winter crop. I don't overwinter it, meaning I can't harvest it just yet during the winter, but I've had kale that was growing in November, and then it comes back for another round and puts on new leaves in the spring. Yeah, so I mean, that's super helpful, when it comes to getting more out of that particular plant. Eating it fresh, you can juice it, you can use it in smoothies. I know that that's been a craze for a number of years. I have blanched it, so washed it up, blanched it, which is, getting it in some boiling water, couple of minutes, pulling it out, and then putting it into kind of an ice bath to stop the cooking process, and then freezing it to have it added later. You and I have talked in some conversations offline about the great use in kind of soups, so it holds its texture really well, much better than, let's say, a spinach. Right, so it's a great help for that. I've not tried, and probably don't have any immediate plans on trying to like ferment, something like kale. We know a bunch of people love kale chips, I've seen someone that I'm pretty sure is a listener of the show dehydrate kale and turn it into a kale powder. So like a super powder, like a superfood powder.
Right.
And that's on my list to try. I haven't tried it yet. So there are a bunch of different ways you can eat it. Some of my favorite recipes include kind of a hearty green like that. And there are a lot of varieties. My favorite so far is your typical curly kale, but there's a Tuscan kale. There is the /dinosaur kale, right? There's one of the ones that Ben introduced me to is the blue dazzling blue.
Dazzling blue. Don't get it backwards now.
Right, yeah. DB, yeah.
First
Dazzling blue.
I
have seeds for 1,000 head kale. I haven't actually grown it yet.
What's that?
Which is supposed to be like a huge plant, like kind of human size plant. So anywho, a lot of options. Well, we'll see. I mean, I've seen the leaves younger, but it's kind of like, I believe it's treated in some areas as a perennial, so kind of the idea of like, almost like a kale tree. You've seen some of those too. So yeah, I mean, I think, there are a bunch of different ways you can cook it. There are a bunch of different varieties in case one in particular you're not a fan of, these plants put on and continue to put on. And one quick note, and I'm going to dump it in here for multi-use. I've had some kale plants go to seed, and the amount of seeds that the plant produces, I mean, you can eat kale all your live long days, so.
No, that's true. And I mean, I didn't really get into saving seeds for these, but that's another aspect that we could definitely break out. I think we need to kind of break that down a little later in the future, though, a little bit more. Because we're both kind of working with saving seeds. But I will say that, so I actually use kale and collards interchangeably. Interestingly enough, for the most part, there's some things that I don't eat collards raw. But when I put them in soups, I actually put them in like 20 minutes before it's done and cook them really good. And it softens it up. So it's, let me think, it's like more palatable, easier to get down, I would say, because like David, which is my 7-year-old child, he, when he's like, Daddy, it's growing in my mouth. I can't get it to go away. And I mean, it's true. You know what I mean? So I was reading about it, and they were like those thicker leaves, thicker leaved greens. You put those in earlier, and they'll go. Because like cabbage, just like that, it's ready to go. I mean, you put it at the end. But I looked into canning it, and it was 90 minutes to pressure can, and I was like, man, it's just not worth it for me to sit there and watch my canner for 90 minutes while it pressure cans. So we're going to, I'm going to nix that one off of my list for canning, but the freezing I haven't done, and I've thought about it, and I've got enough kale out there, I might actually give it a shot.
Yeah, what I ended up doing was, so after I had everything, cleaned, blanched, and then I basically froze it in like cup size.
Yeah.
And so it's actually allowed me to do a couple of things. So when you say you use collards and kale interchangeably, I had some pot liquor from a big batch of collards I made last year, and I froze the pot liquor. And so I basically thawed it and then heated it up and then tossed in the kale to cook in that pot liquor, you know.
Yeah.
So again, it's a favorite and definitely multi-use.